Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Journal Club hosted by the International Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect. This new webinar series features a different journal article each month with the opportunity to meet the author and interact with colleagues around the world as we dig deeper into findings and implications of the latest research. Today, we are excited to have with us our journal editor, Dr. Christine Weckerle, who will discuss the article, The Utility of Twitter as a Tool for Increasing Reach of Research on Sexual Violence. She will share what she and her colleagues discovered when they undertook an evaluation to examine whether sharing content on Twitter increased engagement among stakeholders in a research project focused on male sexual violence, victimization, and resilience. Right now, I have everyone on mute to avoid background noise. We welcome you to enter your questions and comments for Dr. Weckerle in the chat box throughout the presentation. She will answer any questions at the end as time permits. Dr. Christine Weckerle is an Associate Professor of Pediatrics and Associate Member of the Offord Center for Child Studies at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. She is Editor-in-Chief of Child Abuse and Neglect, the International Journal, and founding editor of the open access journal, International Journal of Child and Adolescent Resilience. Her new book with colleagues, Child Maltreatment, second edition, is targeted to those whose practice engages them in the issues of child maltreatment. Her research focuses on youth who have had adverse childhood experiences and their current mental health and resilience. Chris, we thank you so much for being with us today and for your many contributions to the field of child abuse and neglect. Now I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and I'm very happy to be here to start off this Journal Club webinar series. And it's nice to be able to do so on something that's topical like social media and knowledge mobilization. I am in the Department of Pediatrics at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So to first deal with some terminology, knowledge mobilization is really that activity of putting your research into action. And the research has told us that it takes about 17 years for research to get into practice. And I will cheekily be using hashtags throughout this presentation as they are relevant to social media. So kids can't wait is a hashtag. When we look at evaluating knowledge mobilization, we're trying to achieve reach. So are we connecting with the people who want, need, or can use this information? The relevance of our approach, does this make sense? And in our case, in the study we're going to talk about, there's increasing trends for researchers to have a presence on Twitter. There's pediatricians get their own name, tweetricians, and most NGOs in the child rights, child health field, prevent child abuse field, do have their Twitter accounts, as do research funding bodies. So it's a relevant space for seeking an audience. We'll talk about addressing youth towards the end of this presentation. And we want to understand how we can achieve various levels of relationships so that we have, maybe a core group of followers, a core group of people who really pay attention to what we tweet, like retweet it, as well as engage in real time in what's called a Twitter chat, so that we can have a dialogue. So it's a very valuable and flexible opportunity to work in social media. And the critical question is, what are these conversations, these communications, what impact do they have? Does it lead to action? And that's really where we decided to do an experiment. So to understand a bit more on research impact, there is a link to a resource. The relevance of technology and social media becomes more apparent now to us, perhaps post the Me Too movement. We know that most adults and youth have cell phones, and they use their devices for information seeking. They also use these platforms, social media platforms, for social sharing. And research has shown that that can lead to formal help seeking and utilizing online interventions or mental health apps, for example. So the picture here I have is from the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse from the UK, who has a truth project where survivors can log their experiences, not only really what happened to them, but what was the response. So a 9-year-old went to the police and made a report, no action was taken. A child told a teacher, and the teacher's response was, "Are you sure you're not making it up?" So we have such a strong gaze aversion to child maltreatment, and a particularly high stigma and kind of a push away response to child sexual abuse that we often need to be effortfully reminded that kids won't just make this information up. That's clear in the research in terms of false reporting as being a very rare event. And it's really important to hear survivors, to have survivors be heard. So we decided at Child Abuse and Neglect to do a special section on technology and social media, particularly as relevant to child maltreatment and child welfare work. There has been more activity in the medical health field in this area, and child maltreatment has been less quick to kind of get involved in this space and to do research around this. So the special section on technology and social media is in volume 5, and there's 5 articles. It's guest edited by Dr. Tara Black and Dr. Laura Schwab-Reese. And as you can see, there's different sort of angles of articles. Some focus on the use of technology and social media in terms of data collection and methodology. Others look to see how it might, what's going on in terms of the online social networks of maltreated youth and how that relates to their offline behaviors. And then our article is looking at Twitter as the social media platform in conveying sensitive information that is about sexual violence. And that is a shot of the article. And I want to give you a bit of background on this research. It developed from a team grant, Canadian Institutes of Health Research Boys and Men's Team Grant, to look at the underattended issue of male sexual victimization and how that relates to health and resilience, because we aren't even clear on prevalence, as there are more pressures to not disclose for males. There is a place where we put all our articles, and that's in ResearchGate in a research project, and you have that link here if you'd like to look at that. So this is a team of researchers spread across Canada doing different kinds of projects like epidemiological, survey, intervention, systematic reviews, And we've done some of the leading systematic reviews now from Dr. Elizabeth Sayowick, looking at prevalence and characteristics and interventions. And there are no gender-specific interventions, for instance, for male victims. To talk a bit about sexual violence, so we're all on the same page, we first can look at the WHO definition, where the key features are an attempt to obtain any sort of sexual act or to act sexually against a person's will by using coercion, and it's regardless of the relationship to the victim, and it can happen in any setting. So we know it happens in the home, we know it happens in situations like natural disasters, child soldiers, street involved or homeless youth, and that certain youth groups are more vulnerable. LGBTQ youth are more vulnerable. Youth who are in juvenile justice settings are at an increased risk of having been victimized and experienced child sexual abuse, and the list goes on. Child welfare being one other at-risk group. The yearly economic burden of sexual violence is estimated at nearly $5 billion in Canada. And one of our core themes is that we really do need to consider gender and focus on the issue of male victimization, not to detract from the important work being done on female victimization, and generally females are at higher risk than males, but that the male issues are very underattended and the services are not as developed. So to give you an overview of the research findings that we would have been posting about in our social media campaign, there's this 3-minute video that gives you a flavor of some of our team's findings.
Child sexual abuse, or CSA, is often the elephant in the room. Everyone knows it's a serious issue, but it remains a difficult conversation to have. Research is one place to start. While female victimization may be more common, male victimization is a huge modern-day issue. Male victims don't disclose their CSA histories easily or willingly, so having a comfortable support network around them is vital. But to form this, we need to ask ourselves, are we ready to listen? For too long, males have felt discouraged to reveal their stories of child sexual violence. Perhaps we've been a part of the problem by not counteracting gender myths like boys can't be sexually assaulted, or stereotypes about how unmasculine it is to seek help. Fortunately, a Canadian Institutes of Health research team have stepped up to be a part of the solution by opening the conversation. Using a hashtag CIHRTEAMSV social media campaign, they have targeted stigma around sexual violence in males and have mobilized new knowledge. So far, several interesting findings have come from using large-scale data sets. At the point of reporting to child welfare agencies, caseworkers were less likely to note that male victims experienced emotional harm as compared to females. Male victims were also less likely to be placed in out-of-home care. This is a disconnect to the research that showed persistent post-traumatic stress symptoms for many male victims. Following up victims 5 years after the CSA report was substantiated, male victims were 2.2 times less likely to see a physician for physical health than female victims. However, males were 2.3 times more likely to see a physician for mental health problems. Compared to the general population, male victims also experienced a 10-fold increased risk of being hospitalized for health issues. But how does having this background affect other areas, such as dating in adolescence? A high school survey found that 21% of girls and 5% of boys reported experiencing CSA. And of those affected, 1/5 reported experiencing sexual coercion from their dating partners. This tells us that consent and sexual negotiation skills seem important targets to protect youth from re-victimization. So, where do we go from here? There are at least 4 pathways forward. 1. Taking sex and gender into account will keep us focused on the "what about the boys" issue. 2. Trauma and violence-informed healthcare is critical, especially in males. 3. Service providers must ensure safety in young people's environments and relationships. 4. Public health needs to tackle sexual violence as it has with other forms of violence. Without support, victims become even more isolated, leaving their health to suffer. We cannot let that happen. Fortunately, research is guiding us on how to prevent this. And, as a result, the elephant is finally out of the room.
Okay, great. So that was, I have to give thanks to CIHR again, the Institute of Human Development, Child and Youth Health, for having a video talks contest, which that video was won an award. You can find that video on their website, as well as the YouTube Resilience in Youth website, where you'll see all of our videos around this topic. And they're all open access, so do feel free to use them in your teaching and your own tweeting and your own community as well. So to talk just a bit of background about Twitter, although I'm sure it's familiar to most people, it makes sense for us to think about this platform for child maltreatment related knowledge, as Twitter has 330 million monthly users and 3 billion people have an account. And as I mentioned before, you do have this option for real-time dialogue. Twitter post short texts, they're called tweets, and you can add photos and hashtags. And those are all valuable things to do in your tweeting style. People respond to tweets by following that account, using the hashtag as well, or liking a tweet or retweeting the tweet. In the first 24 hours of the Me Too campaign, the hashtag was used over 12 million times. So that's such a short period. It was a lightning bolt of activity, and it was used by 4.7 million users, and the whole discussion trended on Twitter. So it was the top tweets in over 80 countries. So I think that just illustrates the great potential of Twitter. The nice thing about Twitter is that you can look at your analytics, and this data is available for free, and you can get quite a wide range of information to see if what you're doing is having your return on investment for your time and effort in doing so. You can get information about a particular tweet, and you can get information about the audience type. If we're trying to capture youth, are we getting youth as the ones engaging with us? If we're trying to capture males and male advocacy groups, are we getting those? So you can answer very pertinent questions to your work. This is an example of the Twitter analytics. You go to your profile and you scroll down and you can hit the analytics page, and you see something like this where it says in the last 28 days, my tweets went up over 100%. My impressions went up over 90%. My people coming to visit and look at my profile went up. I was mentioned at Dr. Werkerly is my Twitter handle. That was those mentions increased, and I increased in followers. And it can give you that month by month, or you can select particular times. And in looking at a particular tweet, this tweet below where we tweeted about our Resilience app and used a couple hashtags, it was the top tweet, and the you divide total engagements over impressions to get your engagement rate, and our engagement rate was about 2%, when the average across Twitter, across all industry types, would be about 0.05%. So that is considered a high engagement rate. And some of the things that, when you look at that tweet, what made it high was their visuals, and it was tied to a particular day of advocacy, the Bell Let's Talk Day in Canada, seeking to promote awareness in mental health. The goal of our experiment was to determine if a team-based social media strategy on Twitter was effective in increasing the research publication dissemination and knowledge uptake. So we had a very specific question in mind. Does tweeting impact research mobilization or outcome variables? So it was, how do we get, thinking about that 17-year leg, can we do anything to move this research into the hands of those who could use it, who are interested in it, in a shorter period of time? In our case of our Twitter experiment, a month, 6 months or so. And we had 24 accounts that were active, and our requirements for our participants within CIHRTEAMSV was they had to have a RESEARCHGATE account, because that's where we were going to get the dissemination and uptake variables from. They had to have a Twitter account because they were going to be tweeting, and the request was that they did 1 tweet per week. So a real world, not high demand effort. And the participants within CIHRTEAMSV followed each other, and we had a research team Twitter account set up, team_resilience. So if this was an AB design, and it's a fairly well-known experimental design of changing the phase, so that the first condition A was our baseline, because there was very little Twitter activity. Some individuals did have accounts, but most did not. And then condition B would be when we started, the month we started Twitter activity. Then we would go back to condition A, where people were told not to do Twitter activity. Condition B was Twitter activity. So we had 3 sets of Twitter activity to compare to Twitter no activity, because 3 data points is the pattern, and we want to, go in and out to show that this was, you could make causal inferences because you had so many ins and outs. If the pattern results were the same, which, as it turned out, they were. So we had our posts linked to the publications that were available on ResearchGate, and the data we collected then on a weekly basis was the number of profile views on the individual researcher's ResearchGate profile, the number of article reads for each article shared via the Twitter posts, the number of citations for each article shared. So that would be the highest level of knowledge mobilization in terms of uptake that actually was used in another research publication. And it pushes that cycle along towards practice implementation. And we use Twitter analytics really just to focus on the number of tweets. So this is some examples of what the tweets looked like. And these are examples from our team account, Team Resilience, where we would include the article from ResearchGate, photo, and the link. And we would say a bit about what the article was like. We included our unique hashtag. No one else was using CIHRTEAMSV. And if there was something particular, like it was open access, we would note that as well. So that gives you an example. As you can see, we weren't being we're being quite academic about our Twitter posts. We weren't using a lot of, colorful photographs or catchy or provocative questions or sentences in. It was pretty an academic version of a tweet. And what you see then here are our results. And this is the mean number of researchers' weekly tweets, showing that it significantly increased during active periods and significantly decreased during inactive periods. So that you have our baseline is different from the first time we move into it, as well as when we're tweeting compared to when we're not tweeting, that is a significant difference. So that drop is significant, as well as when we're not tweeting and then we start back up tweeting, this rise is significant and it repeats over the cycles. We found that the mean number of ResearchGate profile views significantly increased during active periods and significantly decreased. So we're looking at the same kind of patterns for each of our outcome variables, that when we were active on Twitter compared to when we were not active on Twitter, there is a significant drop in the number of profile views of the researchers on ResearchGate. When we look at being off compared to coming back on, we see there's a significant increase in these profile views, and the pattern is repeated. When we're off to when we're on, it's significant, and when we're back to off, that's significant. And we show the same pattern across our month-to-month time frames. And finally, not finally, the mean number of featured ResearchGate article reads increased during the active and decreased during the inactive. So that you do have the same pattern of when we're tweeting about an article, people are more likely to go to read it. When we're not, that article is not being read. When we get back on, those articles are being engaged with, as compared to when we go off, those articles aren't being read, and you can see again the same significant pattern of findings. And finally, the mean number of featured ResearchGate article citations significantly increased during active Twitter periods and decreased. And I think because citations take a while, it takes a while from publication to citation, because we did this over months, that we were able to show some of these findings, because each of the blocks here represent a month of activity. So I think that's why we were able to see some of this citation findings. So the same pattern holds, is that when the articles are being tweeted about, the citations are higher compared to when they're not being tweeted about. And we go back on to tweet articles, and then they're not higher. So the same pattern holds. So we come to our discussion of all things Twitter and research on sexual violence victimization. What we find that Twitter appears to be a feasible tool for sexual violence related publication dissemination. And I think this is really important that we're able to convey sensitive topics and provide the research base to other sensitive topic discussions. So within the Me Too discussion or the Men Me Too discussion, you can offer some research in how it relates to what people are saying. So you're able to make that fit for other people and expose them to more resources that they can then go and have a look at. The issue of male sexual violence is significant. The rates can be so variable, as we found. Maybe it's about 8% self-reported, but in our article on sexual motives, which is also in the journal, we found that child welfare male youth was much higher, that for both males and girls, the reporting of their CSA experiences was much higher, well over 25%, not this 8%. And we also looked at, in a subsample, where the caseworkers were reporting it. And particularly for males, the caseworkers did not seem to be aware or were told of the males' CSA experiences. And we see this kind of information echoed in many other ways. For instance, in 2018 Interpol data, looking at the child sexual abuse material, up to a third of the material depicted boys. And when boys were present, the severity of the abuse was more significant, more severe abuse. And so that, even the idea of trying to understand how much of it is going on, what are the contexts, as well as then what are the impacts and how we can support, what are the disclosure experiences, how can we support that process of disclosure, that process of recovery, that process of resilience. The abuse is in no way, shape, or form related to the child or youth victim. They had nothing to do with that adult decision. They did nothing to provoke it. They did not deserve it. There are laws against it, but unfortunately, they're stuck with having to sort this information out and come to a place where they realize that they don't have to carry any shame or stigma that entirely belongs to the perpetrator, and that their story is an important story to be told and heard. So that sharing articles on Twitter may have a significant impact in this discourse and exchange of information as it relates to a sensitive topic like sexual violence victimizations of males. Citations are the better indicator, and that extending the data collection, you might be able to look at citations in different forums. So your citation in a research article versus your citation in a policy document. So you're able to push further around that question, does the research make a difference? In knowledge mobilization via other social networks is relevant to investigate to see what are the right social media networks to target the audiences that we are trying to reach. And for our future directions, because we are working primarily in the adolescent and young adult health domain, it's a very good fit because youth and adolescents prefer information digitally, and they seek information online, and they do go online for sensitive information like sexual health or drug use. And in one study of youth internet searches, it was found that 59% of the searches were around issues for issues of violence and safety. In another study looking at adolescent males in mid-adolescence, they found that 57% use these search engines to find health information, 48% utilize social media sites for health information, and some did go to government-sponsored websites. So that, you know, there is this outreach, and outreach is in fact resilience. But we want to ensure that we're part of the solution of bringing quality information into the eyes and hands of those looking for it. So for youth, Instagram would be much more popular than Twitter, and Facebook continues to be used for various groups, although very few studies have examined Instagram. So we're launching an Instagram study to follow up on our Twitter study. And the values of Instagram are that it allows users to edit, share photos, and users are able to follow accounts that interest them. And there's also ways in which accounts will come to their attention without them having to really look for them in their discovery options. You also use hashtags. Hashtags are a lot more robustly used in Instagram. It is primarily photo-based, so visuals, and that is a good fit for adolescents, although posts aren't displayed in any chronological order. So these are some examples from our upcoming research, where we have in the first two a statement from the research document, as well as a notice that it's open access and where they can get the article and the link. And in the other kind of comparator Instagram posting, we don't have an article link, and we are making a more generic resilience message. So it's more information kind of a post. So I hope that that provided some food for thought about, if you're not using social media, whether that makes sense for you and your group. And if you are using social media, some of the ways in which you can think of it as a research question. You know, it's one thing to be on social media or launch a social media campaign, but it's a whole nother thing to say, is it effective? Because really everything is an empirical question. And there's many, many ways to connect with me. I'm happy for people to connect. And the next bit of slides are just references. So I look forward to questions and comments, and I thank you very kindly for your attention today.
Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing this information. Just a reminder to the audience, please type any questions you may have in the chat box, and Chris will be happy to answer those. We have one from a participant here. I'm going to just leave your slide up for now, Chris, with all that
Sure.
information. So this participant is asking, what are your recommendations in disseminating research using social media when journals have embargoed or do not provide open access to published research?
Right. So they usually the author has their own copy that's shareable, the pre-publication copy. And so if you had a ResearchGate account, you could post that shareable copy there. You can also utilize the abstract, which is available to anyone. And you could use a screenshot of the abstract. I think that you can talk about in your tweet, I think what's really relevant is to talk about, like, what's the kernel finding or the news that you can use, or what is interesting or unique about you know, the research, what was the value added. So you certainly can put that into your tweet and just provide the DOI to the article, and people can obtain it. And it doesn't discount that people who are in university settings then would need to pay for the article. If they're not, that's another story. But I think that there's a lot of relevance to say that this research was done. You could also do a tweet series, like, do 3 in a row where you talk about, each of the relevant findings. And again, still linked to the DOI to get a hold of it. So that would be some suggestions.
Okay. So along those lines, someone else is asking if you feel that video attachments are more effective than links to written articles for youth audiences.
For youth audiences?
Yes.
Videos. I think visuals are always good in Twitter, regardless. So whether it's a picture, a screenshot, or a video, that would all be effective. When we get into videos on these media sites that are, you don't have a lot of time looking and engaging with a particular single tweet, the length of the video is really important. So if you have like a 15-second video, then that may be something helpful. Nothing more than a minute. So in our video talks contest, for instance, you can get the statistics from YouTube as to how long people really do engage with the video. So if it's a 5-minute video or 3-minute video, and you will get people engaging definitely for a minute, and then it starts to go quite variable after that. So that would be your recommendation. If you can put something snappy together in 15 minutes, 15 seconds, and that would probably be ideal, but definitely not more than a minute.
Okay, great. Thank you. Someone is asking if you could explain a little bit more about the Twitter live stream conversations for those who aren't familiar with them, like how they work.
Sure. So there's a good thing would be to go on to a Twitter chat and to just be a participant. On Monday nights, there's a resilience chat. So you can just look up #resilience chat and you can engage in that. On Thursday nights, youth do a chat called TEAR, Talk, and that stands for Teens Ending Abusive Relationships. That happens on Thursday evenings. So it's good to kind of pop into a chat to see what goes on. But the format of a Twitter chat is very standard. So you identify what the topic you're going to be talking about, and you can invite participants to the Twitter chat and or welcome those that you know are on there. And then you have usually up to 5 questions that you ask of your participants on your Twitter chat, like A1, A2, and then people provide responses. And then the moderator has the capacity using the Twitter chat dashboard to like and retweet other people's communications about that. And what's important is that everybody uses the designated hashtag so that it'll come into the moderator's field of vision that tweet was made related to that conversation. I find it really effective to get some engagement, to bring different stakeholders together, and they can, if you want specifically to have youth voices, to do some preparatory work and co-moderate with a youth advocacy group, for instance. And yeah, I think that they're really excellent, and they tend to be the thing that I've noticed that increases your followers the most.
Great. So I'm curious, were you active on Twitter before this evaluation, or, for those who really don't know anything about Twitter, do you have any other recommendations for getting started?
Yeah. So this idea, this experiment really did come out of my foray into Twitter. So I was doing Twitter and I noticed that, gee, when I participated in a Twitter chat, my followers really jumped. And I did another Twitter chat and I saw this happening. So I thought, oh, there's something here. And I also, as the journal editor, will tweet out some of the articles, especially if they're open access, on Twitter. And I got good feedback on that as well. So I came into it more as in a trial and error approach when I became editor-in-chief. And I think for people getting into Twitter, think about, really what you need to think about is what is going to be your Twitter content. Like, what are the content areas that you tweet about? So I tweet about mental health, youth resilience in youth, child abuse and neglect. Those are kind of the main things. Those are what I would say, these are what I tweet about. And then to think about what's your Twitter personality. So I think that that's like important, that you allow your personality to come through in tweets. So I may have, as you see in the thank you, a happy face. I might use emojis. That's what I would do, so that to allow your personality to come through, so that they have a sense of a little bit who they're engaging.
Okay, great. I'm going to switch screens now and give people an opportunity to type questions if they would like. We've addressed all the questions that have been sent in so far. So if anyone has a question in the last few minutes here, please feel free to type it real quickly in the chat box.
Yeah, and I know that you're making this available. And if you are tweeting about this webinar, and please do include @Dr. Weckerly in your tweet, so that I can be responding to your tweet about it. So when you have another journal club webinar, people are good at multitasking. One thing to do is to live tweet. So when I was watching Dr. Greenbaum on the trafficking webinar, I could take a screenshot of what I was seeing in her webinar and tweet my comments about it, or tweet out other resources. So tweeting during a webinar is also a great idea.
Great. Okay. Well, we don't have any new questions, but we can certainly put people in touch with you if they have other questions they'd like to ask. And just to let everyone know, a recording of this webinar and a PDF version of the slides will be available within 24 hours on the ISPCAN website. And we encourage everyone to become a member of ISPCAN so that we can continue having webinars like these in the future. Keep in mind that we are now having Journal Club webinars monthly, which focus on journal articles, but we also have other educational and informational webinars monthly as well. If you are interested in presenting a webinar for us or have ideas for topics for our webinar series, either one, please contact us at resources@ispcan.org. And I just want to thank everyone, Chris and the audience, for your time today. It was great hearing all this information, and we hope that you have a good day or night wherever you are. Thank you so much.
And I'd like to say thank you to everybody out there in internet land all over the world. It's a pleasure talking to you today, and have a lovely one.
Okay, thank you so much.